I'm going to say my one positive thing about the war scene.
Okay, so
because I cannot stress this enough. This was the worst part of the episode.
Okay.
And this is the worst part of the show so far.
So I want to talk about the lead up first.
Okay. Beautiful ocean establishing shot.
I love those.
Gorgeous.
Yeah,
It was fantastic. The flying over to them, planning the things out, gorgeous.
Yeah.
Everything else is trash.
Hi, everyone. I'm Madison.
And I'm Alex, and welcome to the Writer's Room, where we analyze media in various different forms and tell you why it works or why it doesn't.
Today, we were talking about House of the Dragon, Season 1, Episode 3, titled Second of His Name.
Before we start, quick spoiler warning for the Game of Thrones show, House of the Dragon show, Fire and Blood the book, or any other Game of Thrones books in the universe. You've been warned.
Okay, so let's get started with a summary of the episode.
Fantastic. Are you ready?
Yes.
All right. 1, 2, 3.
3 years has passed since episode 2, and Alicent and Viserys now have a 2-year-old child named Aegon. In honor of Aegon's name day, a festival is being thrown, culminating in a hunt. During this time, Jason Lannister shoots his shot with Rhaenyra. She's angered, and her and Viserys argue over Rhaenyra needing to marry. Viserys begins to question if he made the right choice in naming Rhaenyra heir. At the same time, Daemon and Corlys have been fighting the crab feeder in the Stepstones. We meet Laenor and Vaemond Valerian as they bicker about Daemon's leadership. Back at the hunt, scouts have found a white hart, an old sign of royalty in the land, and Otto uses this to convince Viserys that Aegon should be heir. After her argument with Viserys, Rhaenyra runs into the forest, followed by Sir Criston Cole. The two are attacked by a wild boar, and Rhaenyra brutally slays it. Viserys drunkenly speaks of his ambitions and failures to Alicent, farther questioning if he made the right choice. The next day, the hunting party does not find the white stag, but a regular one instead. Viserys butchers the stag, solidifying his choice of heir. Rhaenyra herself sees the white hart and returns to camp with the butchered boar. Now in King's Landing, Alicent convinces Viserys to send help to Daemon, and Viserys agrees. Upon receiving the news of this, Daemon is enraged. He decides to take matters into his own hands and uses himself as bait to lure out the crab feeder and his army, successfully winning the war.
How fast do you think that was?
Was it like 1:20?
1:16. So much stuff happened, but why was I so bored? Let's talk about it.
Yeah, I guess overall the episode, it wasn't my favorite out of what we've seen so far in season 1. It was just a lot of the scenes covered the same material. If you look at what episode 2 covered, which was marrying for an heir, right? The same sort of just like general thing. The stepstones, those are sort of the two things we're just talking about again. Yeah.
And we saw the same issue in the last episode, right? Where we we talked about Lady Laena, and then everybody talked about how young she was. And then we met her finally. And it could have been condensed more. And I feel like this was turned up so much more in this episode. Multiple scenes that really just furthered the one scene that it should have been.
Yeah.
So the pacing, again, just very, very slow and not super impactful.
Yeah, no, I agree. So we start with scene 1 with the stepstones burning. Prince Jahar, the crab feeder, is crucifying and torturing people from House Valerian. It was nice to see Daemon flying in on Syraxes. I thought that was a cool moment. I thought Syraxes looked really cool. The color. I like that he's like elongated and kind of spindly. He's got that really long neck. Cool. Gave him a personality. And the guy that's being literally tortured and crucified, when Daemon comes in and he's like, get him, save us. And then Daemon's dragon lands right on him. I thought that was really funny. And I think that's a funny moment that I want more of. That was probably the only funny moment, I think, in the whole episode.
Yeah, I think this scene, another strong opening. This is the second episode, I think, where they've opened up on the Crab King sort of, or crab feeder doing his sort of thing, which is cool. I thought it looked really nice. The colors were cool. Sound design was good. Yeah, I did think this was the best use of the dragons in the show so far, because you saw that connection between Daemon, the rider, and the dragon. Like, he lifted his arm to block himself, and his dragon lifted its wing to block both of them. Yeah. I thought that was pretty cool.
And when Daemon gets shot with the arrow and the dragon like bristles as well, that was really cool.
I would like to, especially knowing that this is 3 years from the last point, I wish they would have made it more clear about when this was, in the sense that, like, I feel like the dragon coming was very cool, but I don't think anybody was acting the way they should be. So like, think about it. The Stepstones have been like under siege for a long time, right? The first time a dragon shows up, they've got to be terrified.
Yeah.
Right. And it's got to be so scary. But if it's been like that for 3 years, they have to be more prepared. They still sort of like shouted, "Oh, dragon," and they were scared and ran, which, like, fair, it's a dragon.
Yeah.
But I feel they missed an opportunity to really show that time has passed before we get 5 people in a row saying, "Oh my gosh, it's been 3 years," you know?
Yeah. So having some sort of preparation. What is our protocol for when the dragon comes in? Which they kind of showed this, but it would have been cool to see it being even more unified. Because basically what we know as audience members is when a dragon comes in, you're done for.
Yeah.
Right? And so if they're not winning because there's a dragon, part of that is because they keep retreating into these caves. And we see that Daemon's dragon can't reach them when they get in these caves. And that's kind of the issue and how they're able to circumvent a literal dragon. I think showing it being more unified, that they do have battle strategy and a plan, would make it more believable that they are still winning. Because
even seeing it the second time, like, nothing is super clear to me in that scene specifically that they know what they're doing to circumvent this, you know?
And if it was supposed to be the first time you see a dragon, then yeah, we need to see this awe-inspiring. I think something else we're missing, again, when we bring it back to Game of Thrones, but basically, anytime Daenerys has her dragons in Game of Thrones, it's epic, right? The music is scary. You're supposed to clearly be terrified because dragons are power. And I mean, they compare dragons to basically gods. And I think we're kind of missing that element. I think it comes from the sound design and the music, a lot of it. And the reactions of the people. So I feel like that could have been a really cool moment where we see that these dragons are brutal and using sound to help with that as well.
I agree. This is another visual thing, which I don't know if they did it poorly, but I wonder if it would have made it more effective. We start the scene with ships on fire and there's fire everywhere. And then the dragon flies in. And I was wondering if it would have been more impactful if they would have had no fire to start. Like, maybe it's like
just moonlight or something.
The moonlight, or like it's dawn and there's fog on the ocean, right? And it's sort of like, it's still that gritty sort of feeling, but then you take all those blues and greens and then fire is being breathed really everywhere. Cool. I feel like visually that would have been a very cool showcase of like what a dragon can do, right? Because we haven't seen a dragon like fight yet, you know? And this is them in battle. They're getting arrows flung at them. Like, I feel like if you really want to showcase how strong the dragon can be while at the same time showing that they have defenses, that's a cool way to do it.
Yeah, that makes sense. I did really like seeing the dragon just obliterate soldiers. I thought that was really cool. Just showing how strong they are. But we go quickly into Aegon's second name day, his second birthday, and and it's sort of just a celebration. It's fun. They're eating, and Viserys is really just wanting to have a good time and celebrate his kid. Otto and one of the other members of the small council talk about the heir and who should be the heir, that kind of thing, in this second scene. And then Tywin Lannister brings a message about the Stepstones, but Viserys does not want to be his party to end because he doesn't want to talk about that. It's not fun. We do get some 3 years have passed in the dialogue, and I do think that was done well.
Yeah, I think so. It's a little like, I think they tell us back to back like 2 or 3 times, and it's like, I get it, you know, like it is like there's a lot to follow. So I understand you wanting to really cement that. But again, I would have rather liked bigger visual differences or bigger like acting differences or direction. You know what I'm saying?
I think the only real physical difference anyone went through was Allison's clearly pregnant. Yeah. And that's good. That's Allison's pregnant.
I do think she's portraying a character a different way, which makes sense. I don't think Rhaenyra did that super well.
That's hard though, because she's not been given anything different from episode 2.
Yeah. No, for sure.
It's the same thing. She's upset that people aren't taking her seriously. It's just amplified now because there is a son now.
That's just something I'm lacking, because it's in the first 2 episodes. I didn't even like think about this, but she's supposed to be like 14, right? Yeah. And there's such a difference between a 14-year-old and a 17-year-old, you know? And I know there are different like motivations happening. Mainly she's like worried about her like place, which I have more to say about that later. But again, it's hard to ground me into this. Oh, it's been 3 years. And all they do is just tell me it's been 3 years.
No, I
that's
agree.
Something I missed.
There's nothing showing. I mean, I don't know what else they could have done because they do so many time jumps. So it's hard. You can't change someone's hair every time you have a time jump because then you'll be changing their hair. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. I did actually like when we first see Alicent and Rhaenyra, their costumes were really nice. Alicent had this rich red dress on, like very royal, regal to me, which is very different from what she's been wearing, I think.
I agree.
And Rhaenyra had would look like dragon scale armor. Like that was cool to me.
That was really cool. I think the dialogue talking about the 3 years have passed was strong dialogue. I think it felt natural, but I do wish they would have showed more instead of just telling us.
What parts are you talking about?
When he was like, it's been 3 years. They can handle one more day or something like that.
I will say that. I thought that was good. What I didn't like about the dialogue is when we have Rhaenyra and Alicent there, Rhaenyra is like being very cold shouldery, which I would completely understand in the context. But it's been 3 entire years. You know, I feel like it would be hard to be that closed off for that amount of time. Again, it's just as soon as the camera stops rolling, time stops in this world. You know?
Yeah, that's actually such a good point. I mean, you had a brother at this time. So much has happened. 3 years is a long time to just sort of seclude yourself. And they definitely show that tensions are rising and they're kind of at their boiling point between the two. We see them arguing and fighting a lot later in the episode. But I agree. The story, if you would have set this episode, minus the kid, right? If you would have set this episode right after episode 2, it would have made perfect sense.
Yeah.
And I think with the time jump, that shouldn't be the case.
And again, like we've been saying this, the time jump is a big issue that they need to deal with because this story does span a wide amount of time and different things happen in different years. But again, they chose to adapt this, right? So they need to adapt it well.
I did think the transition was fun between the scene where Viserys is like, where's Rhaenyra? Somebody tell me where Rhaenyra is. Cut to Rhaenyra under the tree with her little her bard playing for her.
I thought the song was good too, like decent foreshadowing about like who her character is.
And her being like, again, from the beginning. Again.
Yeah, very cute. We like see her reading, and I don't know what she was reading, but I assume it's like maybe some sort of historical text or something to show that, you know, now that she is the heir, she's trying to take things more seriously, right? Because in the last episode, Alicent was like quizzing her, and now she's like by herself studying or reading or something.
That's a good parallel between the two. I did think the scene between her and Alicent where they're kind of fighting and Alicent basically pulls rank and says, as your queen to the bard, you're dismissed. Yeah,
and again, like that's good. Like she would not do that. Not only because she like wasn't queen, obviously, but that's like not something Alicent would do 3 years ago. So I believe that she's matured as a person and changed. And I thought that was a good choice, you know?
And I think the actress does a good job physically. I think that's nice.
I agree.
Then we get into they're going on their hunt, which Rhaenyra didn't even want to go on. And they're traveling to this hunt in their, what are those called?
Like a carriage?
Yeah, yes.
I like it. This is not a good or bad thing. I like that it's like gray.
In the carriage?
Yeah. Like the outside of the carriage is gray.
Yeah.
And it just looks striking, you know?
Yeah.
I like that.
I think overall the episode, it feels almost like there's a filter on all of House of the Dragon episodes. Like they wanted an aesthetic.
Yeah.
And I think that can work to their detriment sometimes because you have pretty scenes that are just nowhere near as pretty as they could be because they're going for this aesthetic.
I agree.
And so I think the gray carriage would have been more successful if it had something to contrast against.
Yeah, well, I'm thinking it works well because we usually see it outside next to greenery and forests and things like that.
Yeah.
Whereas like if that thing's ever parked at the Red Keep, I'm like, it's literally camouflaged, you know?
Yeah.
Speaking of like setting though, when we get there, all the men are like out hunting and everything, and then we see like the women sort of talking, and I thought that was actually a really cool like design. The tents with the silks hanging everywhere, I thought that was very different.
Was cool.
It sort of looked like almost brothely like how a brothel would kind of look, but it was very cool, very warm colors, something we haven't seen a lot, and I thought that was fun to look at.
I thought overall in this episode, what was really fun is the costumes, the set. I agree, and the hair and makeup were really fun as well. And the pug, obviously. I think Alicent specifically, they did a really good job of changing up her look for the show and showing that she was different and had matured, and it was really pretty. Yeah. So we're in this huge tent. The women are gossiping. We meet Larys Strong, who's going to be important later. He kind of is like, I'm not fit for a hunt. Can I come gossip with you?
Yeah, which I completely forgot. Like, I remember him showing up later on, but it's neat that he's like around now.
Yeah, and introduced earlier. I forgot about that too. Rhaenyra enters the tent and it feels to me like she just feels out of place, which I think I got that she doesn't really have a place to go. Normally, I wish maybe they could have contrasted it more or maybe played up her inner dialogue more.
Yes.
Where in a normal situation, if Alicent hadn't married Viserys, her and Alicent would be together and be, the ones gossiping and having fun together, but she doesn't really have that anymore.
Yeah.
And truly she could. She's choosing not to. She doesn't feel like she can. Yeah. And I think maybe some clever camera angles, seeing Alicent and Rhaenyra, or Alicent with Rhaenyra seeing Alicent and someone else. I just think maybe there's some fun ways you could do that where, again, if you put the TV on mute, I could tell you what was happening.
Yeah.
And that could be maybe Alicent walking into frame and Rhaenyra walking out of frame kind of things.
Yeah, I feel like this episode really showcases what happens a lot throughout the series. And I don't know how to describe it. It's sort of like the showrunners are banking on the acting to tell a lot of the story,
yeah, I think
which
so too.
The actors are very, very good. But when they're not given enough, it's hard to convey that. Like, there are so many times in this episode where we just look at Rhaenyra's face for a while.
Yeah.
And I understand that I'm supposed to be feeling something, right? But she just has a neutral expression on her face for a few seconds. And I have no idea what anybody's feeling or what she's going through, No,
I agree. That's why I think in the first watch through, it was confusing. And maybe other people won't agree with me. Maybe they didn't feel confused. I would wonder if they had read the books. Because I do feel like when you understand, you already know all the characters and their names, and you're not trying to remember who all these new people are or who's important, right? Lady Redwine is not important, but she gets as much screen time as Larys Strong in this episode.
Yeah.
So to me, on a first watch, I don't know that Larys Strong is going to be important later.
Yes. And also with your time jumps, your characters do change throughout, right? So without clearly establishing what they want in that scene, it becomes a lot harder to figure it out, right?
Yeah.
Because right now, in my mind, Rhaenyra is sort of split between, we know previously her motivation is like, I want my father to love me, right?
Yeah.
And that's why I want to do these royal things.
Which I do still think is her part of her motivation.
I agree. But now we see her older. She's been the heir for some years. She's studying by herself. Like, does she want to rule now? I really can't tell at all.
Actually,
because
that's so true.
I don't know how to read her face,
Yeah. Well, they're not giving us to know. Again, it's just they're telling us and not showing us. There needs to be a lot more visual cues
exactly
to the show, because I mean, what happens is throughout this episode, we get a scene about something. And this kind of happened in last episode. We get a scene about how Rhaenyra is upset and doesn't want to marry with Viserys. We get another scene where the same thing happens. Then we get a scene with Kristen Cole where she's talking about how she doesn't want to marry, and how we get a little bit more information about how she feels like she's not really going to get to be heir if she remarries. So that's that tiny little bit more of information. Then we have another scene with her and Kristen Cole, and they're talking about the same thing.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of the same thing being rehashed, and we're getting maybe like one little splash more of information. So it's not enough to warrant a whole scene.
Yeah.
I think that makes the pacing feel slow, and it doesn't make it as entertaining. And again, we're just playing one layer.
Yes. Yeah, one layer a lot of the time. Rhaenyra and Viserys sort of blow up at each other after a little while in the tent because they've, again, talking about the marriage thing.
Well, so we have Jason Lannister comes in and he's basically hitting on Rhaenyra, and which I thought that was funny.
I thought it was, a good idea. I feel like Rhaenyra had no character in the situation. Like, she was playing this, like, what is happening? Oh, you're flirting with me? Where I feel like she could have... if not like had fun with the scene, like humiliating him, you know, knocking him down a peg, at least like being this like, how dare you try to flirt with me, right?
Right.
Because if this is such a big deal, right? If she's actively like getting into shouting matches with the king in public about this marriage thing, I don't feel like she's going to be like, oh my gosh, is he flirting with me? Like, again, that's just a conflicting character thing to me. Or
she needed to be just aggressively angry.
Yeah.
And we saw that before.
Yeah.
So.
But it's just a lukewarm meet cute, you know?
Yeah. That she's just kind of there. And I feel like the actor who plays, that's one guy playing both Jason and Tywin Lannister, which I thought was really funny. I think he does a really good job of being those two different characters. And it's fun to see the same actor doing that. It's funny that
we have two like twins in this series.
It is. I was thinking about that.
We don't know the other one yet. It's just like funny, I guess.
And the actor played Hugh in Game of Thrones.
Oh, okay.
And he died in the first season. But I just think that's a funny little Easter egg that we'd seen that actor before. But after that scene with Jason Lannister, Rhaenyra then goes to Viserys and he's really mad because he wants her to remarry. He says he's had parchment up to his waist or something like that. And they're really aggressively yelling at each other. I did think this was fun to see any sort of change in dynamic. So a lot of the episode so far has kind of felt here we're all a little bit angry, so any sort of spike in dynamic is going to be more entertaining. So I did think having this yelling match here and everyone kind of freezes and listens was fun, and then Otto being the one to interrupt it.
Yeah, we see this later. I think Otto really shined in this episode. I feel like his role is like the twisted royal vizier, hand of the king, like secret puppet master.
I wish
was good this episode.
I agree. I think what I wanted them to play up is Otto is not going to be in the spotlight because he knows if he's in the spotlight, it becomes more dangerous for him and he can't manipulate as well.
Yeah.
So I think maybe playing that up for him, it felt really subtle. So if there was a way to show us that he is the one moving all these pieces, but his goal is for everyone not to know he's moving all these pieces, I think that would be really fun. Because he comes in and he interrupts and he's smart. He knows that they should be having this conversation. So it looks bad. And he brings up the white stag that they found.
Yeah.
Which being a symbol, this wasn't in the books. This stag, I don't think this hunt at all actually was in the books.
Okay, cool.
Let me tell you.
I actually think it plays really well on screen.
Me too. I think having a hunt is fun. George R. R. Martin had said he has been wanting to do a huge hunt since Game of Thrones came out when Robert Baratheon. Have you heard this?
Yeah, I think so.
And he was just kind of walking through the woods. So it was really fun. I've never really seen before what a big hunt that a king would go on would look like. So that in general was really cool to see, I think.
So, and it is cool, like the white heart making Viserys like question his things because it's also like fantastical. Like that makes sense to me. I really like how Otto keeps using it to be like, wow, Aegon should be king. Like that's the sort of the
sign on
sneaky,
his name day.
You know, I thought that was done really, really well. Like that was obvious in a good way because he was being secretive and sneaky about it. And it played well and it was fun to watch.
Yes. And then, so we have that scene where the white stag is brought up. And do we want to jump to the second scene with Otto where he's talking about the white stag?
We can, sure. I think it's, again, like that idea is good. And then it's just sort of the same thing again, where it's like,
exactly,
the white stag is here. And Otto's like, wow, Aegon should be king. And then the scene continues.
Well, then he offers up, later in the episode, he offers up Aegon and Rhaenyra to marry.
Yes.
Which I thought was kind of funny. And obviously Viserys was like, that's pretty gross. We're getting younger and younger with these marriages.
Yeah.
And I guess it would have solved a lot of problems if that's what they ended up doing.
Yeah. Well, it's neat to me because like it's now that he's sort of won his first battle, right? Like his daughter is the queen, right? He's still plotting this thing so far in advance, right? He's like, because this will make everybody happy and everybody will still be loyal to me and this and that. And I thought that was cool. Like he's constantly thinking the next move, which is nice. He knows
100% that, because at first I was like, wait, that's a really good compromise. They both get to rule. But Otto knows 100% that the second you make Aegon and Rhaenyra a couple and they're king and queen, that it's Aegon ruling.
But I do think
in his mind, that will be easier on everybody.
Yeah, I've thought about this with Otto's motives, because when he's talking to Alicent later on in the episode, he basically is trying to get Alicent to convince Viserys to name Aegon the heir instead of Rhaenyra. What is his true motive? Because one, obviously it is, he wants his family line on the throne. He wants Aegon and his descendants to be on the Iron Throne. But he said something about how I can see the end, right? The end is clear, but the path is not, or something like that. I thought that was a good line. And he's kind of right that if Rhaenyra is on the throne, it is going to tear a lot of things apart. And maybe part of him is trying to be noble. I kind of don't think that's true. He's just using noble tactics to hide.
No, I don't think he's noble. I think he's making like logical choices based on what's going to benefit his people.
Yeah.
You know?
And he could have not done what he did, right, in the first place, and have him marry Alicent, and because that did start a lot of things anyways. So I do think him hiding behind this idea that, well, it's better for the realm was a fun choice. So let's go back. We have, after Rhaenyra and Viserys get in their screaming match, Rhaenyra takes a horse and rides away with Criston Cole following her. And they sort of have a mini heart-to-heart. I like seeing them race through the forest. I like seeing the trees.
Yeah, that was pretty.
This was when I thought it looked really pretty, but it did feels like when you take the contrast down.
Yeah.
On your, right? When you're
agree.
like, you're editing something for Instagram and you want it to be aesthetic. And
Yeah.
that's really how it felt like.
There's one shot where they're like standing on their horses and it's framed with like leaves and trees in the foreground and they're all dark. So it's a very beautiful framing. But yeah, like there's no pure black. All the highlights are brought down. Like it's just kind of gray. It looks ungraded.
I was wondering if they did that to show that it's the morning, maybe.
I don't know.
But I feel like we could have done that with like a beautiful sunrise instead. Because the trees look so cool.
Yeah, for sure. I do like that Criston is actually doing something this episode.
Yeah.
And as of right now, like, I don't know. I liked him more after this scene.
Me
like,
too.
I like that Rhaenyra has a friend. I like that Criston has a friend. Like, they confide in each other a little bit.
This goes back to your point about when the camera stopped rolling, the story stops. It's been 3 years and he's her, like, guard. He's probably around her constantly. This scene was their relationship progressing and starting. And I think maybe it could have been nice to see Criston Cole already being that person she can go to.
Yeah, I was wondering that too, because I thought like, oh, they're talking about like marriage and things, and I guess that's something you like wouldn't normally talk to with your Kingsguard. But yeah, I feel like they could have pushed it farther.
It felt like this was the first time they ever did that.
Like Rhaenyra, because she's still like rambunctious. She should ask questions that are like, very clearly you do not talk about this, and he should be like, your grace, I can't do that. And then they're like sort of joking, and then they open up and talk about those subjects.
So see what I'm saying though, that it felt like this was the first instance of that. I did like his lines about you're not toothless, meaning you helped me.
Yeah, I agree.
I think that still could have absolutely worked this could have been a time for humor. We see her and Criston Cole, like, spoiler, later they do have a more connected relationship. And I think this could have been, it just could have gone farther. We could have had a time for humor here, and maybe he makes her laugh,
I agree. Because especially they're away from everybody else, right? So they're like, their political guard is down.
Yeah.
They're just hanging out in the woods.
And I think if we would have set up that they feel comfortable around each other, because how would Rhaenyra survive if 3 years she has no one to talk to?
Exactly.
So I do think, and again,
when she's, as we've seen, she's completely shut Alicent out, right? So the only person she's been talking to is Criston, and even them, like, they're barely friends.
Yeah, and so I think maybe if they had like some inside jokes or something really fun, or if she says something that she really cannot say, something like blasphemous about the king, right?
Yeah.
Or Alicent even, I think that could have been fun, but it still was very formal.
Yeah.
Which is fine. I think it could have stayed formal, but it would have been nice if this scene would have happened right after if there had been no time jump and this scene took place right after episode 2, I would have believed it 100% that this was that
again,
scene.
It's just going farther because you have all the pieces there. Rhaenyra is like, she's wanting to be a part of this council and everything like that, but she's still like young. She's got a lot of energy. Kristen grew up not in this world.
Yeah.
So like they would act differently around just each other.
Yeah, I did like that he checked her and said a lot of people would envy your position.
Yeah. So again, just it was a fine scene. It could have been a little more.
And maybe if he would have gone farther with that, and he's the only one that sort of tells her how it is, that you are really privileged in what you have. Yeah. Could have been fun.
So all that to say, I like Kristen so far. Hopefully that doesn't change.
I think it's going to change. So then we get to a continued scene about hounds and hunting, and we're tracking the white stag, and it feels like an omen, and that's really all that happened in this scene. It's again the same thing. And we're back to the tent. We're eating. Viserys is drinking. Yes. Jason Lannister gifts him a spear. Yeah. And discusses being honored to take Rhaenyra as his wife. Mm-hmm. And I
wish they would have done this because I like the suitor plot line, like a embodiment of like all the suitors Rhaenyra's had. Yeah. And I feel like it was just kind of boring after the first meeting of them. He just sort of existed in this party for the rest of the episode. And I feel like, again, they should have either gone on one side of the spectrum. He either needs to be like, they talk about how prideful he is, right? He needs to be like a jock level idiot, sort of like, you should marry me because I'm huge and I have a lot of land, you know? Yeah. Or he could be another potential like schemer, like plotter kind of guy. And I felt like he was literally just a guy there, you know? That's funny. Like he's just there to say, hey, we should marry. You know, like,
that makes sense.
It's just not a super lasting impression. If he wasn't like the twin of that guy and I saw the shot of the two of them together, I don't know if I would remember him, you know? He's a Lannister, you know? Like I should remember who this guy is.
Yeah, that's fair. I thought he did a good job of having a character. But I do think this scene itself could have been the first scene we saw him in, maybe. Yeah. Because what happens is we see Viserys watching Jason Lannister watching Rhaenyra, which we see that a lot in the show. We see someone watching someone watching someone, which I do think is a fun plot device. I wish it almost had like its own musical theme or something to make it feel purposeful and pointed that we're repeating it so much. Because right now it just kind of feels like the only device they know how to use. Yeah.
That and quick cuts between two scenes.
Exactly. It doesn't feel like it's being used to its full extent. So we see that moment. We see Jason Lannister kind of checking out Rhaenyra, and I don't think Viserys talked to him. I just think he noted it. Right? I don't think they were hinting that he went and spoke with him. Rhaenyra comes back right after that scene and says, "What are you trying to do? Get me married?" And he never says, denies or confirms that he did speak with Jason Lannister. I don't think he did, because then we have this scene where Jason Lannister speaks to him. So I think he was just mad in general. I don't think it had to do with Jason Lannister. Yeah, but I do think this scene could have happened then. We could have had him talking with the king then about Rhaenyra, and because we really don't need it. It kind of is the same scene happening over and over. But I did think the scene was fun. I do think that actor's really fun.
Yeah, I think Viserys like telling him off, like, what do you mean I've chosen a new heir? I thought that was cool.
I did think that was cool.
I just like when Viserys gets to do things, you know, because I feel like he's a really strong presence. After this, he sort of begins his like descent of feeling bad. And I get that he's like drunk and everything, but I wish, especially after a jump like this, I wish they would have taken a second to talk about his illness at the beginning of this episode.
I didn't notice this.
You know, like is he cured? Is he fine? You know?
I didn't notice this, but someone said it on Reddit that which I'm obsessed with Reddit, if you don't know, it looked like two of his fingers were shorter, right? Okay. So he had with the maggots in episode 2. Yeah. And then it looks like it's spread to his other finger, which I wish maybe we could have had an establishing shot.
Yeah, I didn't catch that.
I didn't catch that either. I wish we could have had, that could have been a clue that time has progressed and we could have seen that early on.
Because I feel, that could be, again, like how they obviously showed Alicent's fingers in the last episode. I feel like that could be really obvious. Yeah. And again, that's half of a second. So now you don't have to tell me it's been 3 years 4 times, you know? Yeah.
This was another scene with Jason Lannister where Alicent was watching, which I thought was fun. And then we see Otto hop in and update on the hound is what I wrote, or the stag, updating on the stag, right?
The hunt thing.
The hunt, yeah. And he asks, and Viserys asks about Jason's proposal. I kind of think what might have been cool, because I think we've seen Otto do this a lot, and he is the hand, so it makes sense, where he comes in and gives information or talks about some sort of update. So it makes sense that that's his role as the hand. I wish he always does this in such a timely manner, right? He does it when they're fighting.
Yeah.
Now he does it when Jason has just asked for a proposal that he would Otto probably has an opinion on that, you know? And wants to know what's happening. So I wish it felt more obvious and purposeful, because I don't know if they're doing that on purpose or they're just using it as a transition. I wish it felt more purposeful that he's having this information and sits on it until an opportune time.
I felt like it was purposeful.
Oh,
I wrote that down again. Otto's really stepping up as the royal vizier role this episode.
Okay.
Yeah, because I can see, like, I do agree. Like, anytime anything important happens, he's like, my liege, I have something to tell you, you know?
Could we have seen him watching Alicent, watching them,
yeah,
right?
Exactly.
They love to use that. Could we have seen that? Or could we have seen, because who is the better player? Otto,
yeah,
right?
For sure. At least that's what I assume they want us to think.
Yeah, Alicent's learning, but I think it could be fun for him to be waiting. We could have seen him calculating the time of when to jump in.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And Alicent taking note of that.
Yeah.
Then we have more power struggle of who is really in charge, Otto or Alicent.
I agree.
And that would be more fun.
So yeah, maybe they are showing these things. But again, like, finding that fine balance between too subtle and too obvious is always going to be hard, especially in a show this dense with so many characters and so many things and so many time jumps. So, you know, if they're doing these things, that's great. But if, you know, I'm not catching them, so I'm not gaining from it, you know?
Viserys keeps getting more and more drunk, and then Lionel Strong ends up giving his advice, suggesting that Rhaenyra marry Laenor, which is Rhaenys and Corlys's son.
Which, again, another character that we are talking about and haven't really seen yet, which is hard to do. We do meet him later this episode, which is good, so we can put a face to the name. But I felt it was delivered like in an easy way to understand. Like, they named all the people, like this person, son of this person, cousin of the, you know, I thought that was good.
I do really like when shows like this talk to you about a character before they show you the character, because it doesn't feel like it's coming out of nowhere. Game of Thrones does this all the time. And I think it's really successful. I think it was helpful. So when we did find him, it's like, oh, okay, that's who they were talking about.
Yeah, I agree. I really like Lionel Strong in this episode. I think he does a really good job. I love the idea of somebody who's not necessarily on Viserys' side, but like acting like not for his interest, right?
Yeah.
Like, he's truly like, I think this is probably the best choice. Because Viserys even grills him. He's like, what, do you think your son is a better match? And he's like, you honor me, but actually you should marry like your cousin's daughter or whatever, you know?
Yeah.
I thought that's cool. Again, just like showing in this long amount of peacetime that there are some people who are probably like relatively peaceful. Like, not everybody is moving to kill the next person.
Yeah.
Like we see in Game of Thrones, where there's a new king every other day, right?
Yeah. He seems very pragmatic. I do like him as a character. He seems like he truly does want the best for everyone and Viserys and the realm. I think it would be fun if we contrasted it with more clear conniving from the other characters.
Yeah, I would love this dynamic played out in the small council scenes more, right?
Yes. Yeah, that's such a good point. Because bringing back to Game of Thrones, what makes Varys so fun is his contrast to Littlefinger.
Exactly.
The two of them foil each other so beautifully that anytime they're together, it's like fireworks on screen. And I think that they kind of have that right here with Lionel Strong being... And he is not like other characters we've seen, where he is sort of like quiet and pragmatic and just smart. He's going to do what he thinks is best, and he's not afraid to give his opinion. And I think that's a really fun character. People seem to really like him on Reddit. The fans seem to like him. Yeah. And I wish that played out more in the small council meeting. But after that scene, we go into Rhaenyra and Kristen talking about her becoming queen. And if she asks, do you think the realm will really accept her? And what does he say? He says something like, they don't really have a choice.
He says, I'll have to.
Yeah. Which I think was kind of funny, because we don't really get this. Yeah, what does he actually think?
I like the bluntness. Like, they're setting up, not that he's dumb, but I think Kristen's a very matter-of-fact person right now. So I like when he's, like you said earlier, when Rhaenyra's like, my life is so hard. And he's like, okay, whatever.
Yeah.
You know? Or like, do you think they'll like me? And he's like, it doesn't matter. You know? I think that's cool. I also like the idea. Again, we've talked, doing the same scene over and over is not working in this episode. Right. But the idea of everybody at this place and splitting up does feel very Game of Thrones-esque to me. Like everybody's sort of on their own quest while we're at this big place. It reminded me of when they're traveling back to King's Landing in season 1 of Game of Thrones. And like we have the stuff with the dire wolves and Joffrey gets bitten and things like that. And everybody's sort of off doing their own thing. And it was just good. Like it's a good way to fill the world. Like like other stuff is happening besides exactly what we are watching, which has also been an issue so far of the show.
Yeah. Then the boar comes out and attacks them. Mm-hmm. One, I don't know, that boars are scary.
Boars are scary. And I think that boar looked okay.
Okay. I think it was pretty good.
I think it was enough to like, it didn't take me out.
Yeah.
You know?
I'm wondering if a boar was on top of you, if you could physically really hold off that boar like that.
After it knocked Kristen literally 10 feet back, I was like, wow, she must have that Targaryen strength about her.
Yeah. I was just think that's kind of funny.
It was crazy. Also, visually it looked cool, but when Kristen like slashed at it, that sword was a millimeter away from killing Rhaenyra. I know. I was like, my God, you are the King's Guard. You need to chill out.
He kills the boar and then Rhaenyra aggressively stabs it. Mm-hmm. I have thoughts on this.
Okay.
I think I like it. I think it was cool that she did that. I think it gave meaning to the gore and we specifically see her. So it's not about what she's doing to the boar. It's about like, it's not necessarily about her stabbing it. We're not seeing the like stab wounds being made. We're seeing the blood splash on her. Mm-hmm. I wish the whole episode, because here's the thing, we're 3 years later. I wish the whole episode was, we are right at this boiling point. And it's tense. And it's like, what's Rhaenyra going to do? What's Rhaenyra going to do? What's she going to do? No, Rhaenyra, don't say that. Don't say, oh, Rhaenyra, right? Like, you're hurting yourself. I wish we had the episode just felt like tense. And like every time Viserys and Rhaenyra are in a room, every time Alicent and Rhaenyra are in a room, I wish we were on the edge of our seat waiting for this boiling point. And then she goes insane on this boar.
Yeah.
I think that would have, instead it just felt like she's able to control herself. She's angry. She's upset.
Yeah.
Also, something else that really bothers me about it is every man in this show talks about how like, she's kind of a teenager, right? Mm-hmm. That's kind of the thing is, she's just like a teenage girl and we're going to call her a teenage girl and she's just immature. And it feels very much like they feel as if she's just a 17-year-old girl acting out. And I wish they weren't right, because she's not helping her case. She's not being the smart thing, which the smart thing would be to prove I am heir.
Yeah.
Oh, you think you're better? No. So she's not doing the smart thing because she's never played this game and she's never had to. So I wish they either went all the way in where she wasn't this brooding person, because I don't think brooding would work for 3 years. She's not getting what she's pouting, right? Yeah. And that feels very childish. And so she is being really childish in this episode. So when they call her childish and act like they can't trust her, they're not wrong. She is childish. And I think it could have been cool to either see her really holding back and wanting to attack and then we get the boar moment, or it could have been really cool to see them dismissing her regardless of how adult and mature she was.
Yeah.
See what I'm saying?
I agree. And the after episode sort of enlightened a lot of this for me. They said the theme of this episode is sort of like leaving childhood behind.
Yeah.
That's the killing the boar is sort of the catharsis changing moment. And I can see that. I understand. And that works well. But again, I don't think it's set up or resolved in the right ways, because entirely before this, all I've seen is her making faces, neutral faces that I can't read. And when she gets back to the camp with the dead boar, she's walking with like, I guess more of a smoldering face, but like I still have me watching it the second time. I could not read what anybody was thinking about anything.
Yeah.
And there are so many things that are happening, right? Mm-hmm. She brought back this impressive kill. That's not what women should be doing.
What I thought was really cool about that moment specifically is she didn't, Kristen Cole helped. Like, she stabbed it. She was part of that. She was fending off the boar. Her and him together killed that boar. They tied up a stag and let Viserys stab it. right? So it was really fun to see the contrast of this is fake. Viserys didn't kill this stag.
Yeah.
Right? This was not real. We're all just pandering to some adult man. And then we see Rhaenyra be strong and actually kill something herself and fend off a boar and without any help and barely a real weapon. And see what I'm saying?
No, it makes... Well, isn't the dagger's like the dagger, right?
Yeah, but I mean, which is like a dagger versus like a boar.
Yeah, and again, like the parallels are very good. It's very cool. I just like going into that scene, I didn't really care. And she was, again, I'd love for her to be like furious, enraged, but she just sat down and she's like, nobody likes me. And then the boar charges out and then she gets all stabby. And I'm like, oh, were you angry this whole time? You know?
And it's clear to me that part of the issue is, we've set up in episode 1 and 2 that she wants her dad to love her and feel proud of her and feel like she is worthy. And with Aegon being born, and also him being named Aegon to me is so funny. Because I think it's really, I know obviously that came from the books, but Viserys being so obsessed with this prophecy and this Targaryen legacy, so naming him, this is the first Aegon since Aegon the Conqueror. He's second of his name, which I think was a cool title in the episode too.
Well, I'm wondering in the book if like Alicent suggested or something, or if Otto like, you know, because again, if you're dead set on your daughter being heir, I don't know if naming your son Aegon's the best idea,
right?
You know?
Exactly. And so she sees the dynamics at play that he is so proud of this little 2-year-old. When she was in the carriage and everyone starts clapping for baby Aegon, I thought that was really good, seeing her kind of, I mean, I agree. I wish there was more nuance, but I did get that where they were all clapping and she's kind of alone in the carriage.
I feel like a lot of this episode is sort of half-baked for this whole sequence, the whole hunt sequence. Oh, like the idea of a hunt is very cool. I can see the character parallels. I just don't think they were hit home strong enough. Like I was actively trying to keep myself engaged because I was bored, you know?
Yes. So after Rhaenyra and Criston slay this boar, they're back at the bonfire. We're at this bonfire with Viserys and Alicent, which I liked this bonfire. I thought it was a cool visual. Obviously, like fire and blood. I thought it was just fun to see this giant fire.
How the light was hitting his like Targaryen emblem, I thought was really nice.
The orange, it was so pretty. And Viserys starts talking about his dream and a male babe being born wearing the Conqueror's crown, which makes me think it was his idea to name him Aegon. And he basically blamed himself and his ambition for killing Emma, which I don't think is fair. I don't think that's fair to put on him.
No, but it is cool to see him like spiral. And he admits like, I always like I wanted to be a dreamer. I want, you know, that's so rare. And like, that's cool. That's like a cool insight.
And he says he never thought he'd remarry and have a son.
Yeah, because it is like kind of selfish, which is like fun for this character. It
begs the question, if he did plan to remarry, if he never thought that's what was going to happen, I mean, that's why he made Rhaenyra heir. Yeah. So Rhaenyra's right in what she's thinking about how Aegon is, at least in this moment. Later, things change a bit. Yeah. But at least in this moment, Rhaenyra's right. I mean, he feels very torn about the situation. And then we see that in the next scene with the stag being tied up. He's very disappointed that it's not the white stag. He is, I guess, like hungover. Yeah. And it's all tied up. I thought this was a really cool scene. It just felt like you have this king, this grand king. He's the last rider of Balerion, and he like misses the stag's heart. You know, I thought that was cool. And then it's all just planned for him. And then he does it, and then they clap for him, and it's all just fake. And I thought that was really fun and read really well. I thought it was good. I do. So after we see that, we see Rhaenyra and Criston on like the mountain peak or whatever, and they do see the white hart. They see the white stag. Yes. And I have conflicting feelings about this because it is like cool. Yeah. But I'm not totally sure what they're wanting me to gain from that. Like, is it supposed to tell me that like, oh, she should be the heir, right? Because all the stuff that Viserys is going on in his mind, that's about the prophecy that we know doesn't happen for 200 years, right? So like nobody... But if it's between Rhaenyra and Aegon, both of them aren't the one, right? Right. So I don't know. What were your thoughts on that scene? Because I thought it was a little confusing. I didn't hate it. I was just like, I'm not sure what I'm supposed to get from that. Yeah, I wish we would have set up that Rhaenyra, because right now she's done nothing to prove she'd be a good ruler. Absolutely nothing.
True. Yeah. To be fair, neither is Aegon. So.
I mean, true. She picked like Kristen Cole, which I think was a smart choice. That was the Rhaenyra choice, you know? Mm-hmm. She picked...
I guess she like went to Daemon on Dragonstone and like settled things like that.
And she suggested using dragons for that one issue in the last episode. But I feel like all she's proven is that when hardship happens to her, she's going to pout and be upset about it.
Yeah.
You know? And I think if she was... Because even if she was amazing and perfect and clearly a strong person, which she is, right? Yeah. She is clearly strong. I think if she somehow showed that, let's say she rode Valerian, she had Blackfire the sword, if every single thing was put together and she solved the issue in the Stepstones, all these things, they're still never going to let her be queen. Mm-hmm. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And so I think it would have been more fun. I think this stag moment would have rang true of, oh, she is a good heir if we would have seen her be one. I think they could have gone in that direction. I thought it was fine, even though it didn't have a clear, perfect metaphor. Yeah. Because when Kristen Cole is trying, he's like going to pull a sword and she says, leave it. Mm-hmm. I did think that on its own was enough to feel some sort of change and shift.
Okay, yeah.
And it's... And maybe what it is in this next episode... I wish it would have happened in this episode. So I could have seen... They all think the stag is a symbol of the... prophecy, and I mean not all of them, but Viserys thinks that, but everyone else thinks it's going to be this.
It's royal. It's a sign. Otto's really hyping it up. Like, this is destiny
of Aegon being this amazing and wonderful king. Mm-hmm. And I think if what we could have showed through this is that the stag is actually just a symbol of change, maybe. Like they said after the episode that this was sort of a death of childhood in this episode. It was this change from being a child. I think maybe that's what they were trying to get at with her bringing the boar back to camp. That would have been
fun. Maybe what's his name? The strong, I don't know his real name. The clubfoot. Larys. We could have introduced him more, and he could have said something like, "Actually, in older text, it's a meaning of this."
That would have been cool.
Because that's neat. I do like that.
After she sees the stag and she brings the boar back to camp, and that is kind of different. Like she wasn't going back to camp, and now she's back, but. I don't feel like that's a metaphor enough because she was going to come back anyways. And, and then she ends up having an argument with Viserys afterwards. But I don't think she changed from her first argument in front of everyone to her second one. They didn't yell as much, but not much really changed. Yeah. Viserys is the one that made a change. Yeah. So I think what if Cole would have all kind of tied this in a bow for me is if after seeing that stag and it being this symbol of change, she walked into the throne room and told her dad how it is. And she's basically decided, I'm going to stop pouting. It's been 3 years of pouting. Yes. I'm going to show them I'm going to be a great heir. Right? I think that could have been powerful, but instead she just kind of had another argument with her dad after. Yeah. Right? Am I wrong? I'm missing something?
And these ideas are good. They're just not executed all the way through. Yeah. You know?
So she comes back to camp with this boar. Everyone's kind of watching. And then we're back at King's Landing. And Aegon is crying and being taken away. And then Otto comes in and basically talks to Alicent about how Aegon should be king. We talked a little bit about this earlier. And
I did like the scene. It's showing time has passed. And the relationship right now is sort of Otto is the mastermind and then Alicent enacts the plans with her own logic and thinking, which I think is cool. Like it's a natural progression. She's not the top one in charge. She is the queen, but like she needs more time to really mature into this role. And I thought that was shown well in this one scene.
And you can clearly see, so when we go into her actually speaking with the king Viserys and convincing him to handle the issue of the crab feeder, you can see that Alicent is smart and capable and can manipulate people.
And again, she's like speaking more clearly to him. Like they're not equals necessarily, but she's like, they've been intimate many times. They're married. She's speaking with much more comfortability than we've seen her before, right? Yeah. Which is another like good way of showing that time has passed. Like this relationship is different and stronger.
And it's always fun to see a king being manipulated by the queen. We see
For
that
sure.
actually a lot in Game of Thrones, and
Absolutely.
I think that's always fun because no one else, especially because it's all these men trying to tell him what to do, and no one can actually get the king to do what is going to be the right thing, which is go and help this war, go and help your
Yeah.
brother. That is
Sorry.
going to be better, but no one else can do it. But Alicent does it.
Yeah.
And I think that's fun. That gives Alicent power. She feels strong. It feels like, because women have to play the game differently than men. And I think that this was a fun way of showing that.
I agree. And while we're at the King's Landing, I do want to talk one more idea I had. I wish we could have heard more about the war. I know Viserys says like there will be no more talk of war. I wish we could have heard more during the festivities of the name day ceremony. And maybe that's just like, you know, generals coming and telling Otto things, and Otto doesn't tell Viserys because he doesn't want to know, or like people whispering in the back, because it's, I still just don't
see how
fully take the battle that seriously yet, because we've talked about how important it is, but it's just, it doesn't really mean anything to me yet.
Yeah.
You know,
how does it actually affect anyone here?
yeah.
And I guess
they could even be like, where are
right?
my crabs? And they're like, we couldn't get any crabs because the
Yeah.
crab king is taking it, or something like that, right?
Yeah.
Like some insignificant reason, because right now, like, no crops are suffering, no livestock. It seems like nobody's losing any money except Corlys, right?
And also, Daemon being gone seems like a good thing for the city.
Everybody's happy.
So,
nobody cares.
Tell me how there's real world consequences for this war not being won.
Yeah, or have Viserys like lash out because somebody's like, thank God Daemon's not at this party, and he's like, the hell did you say? You know, something like that. Just because, it's all just so inconsequential.
Yeah, I
Speaking
agree.
of inconsequential, are we at the fight scene?
No, let's talk about how. So Rhaenyra and Viserys have a conversation because after Alicent speaks with him, and again, it's just kind of the same thing. Viserys is telling Rhaenyra she needs to remarry. Rhaenyra is arguing. Basically, it boils down to Rhaenyra feels like if she marries someone, she's just a tool, an object to be married off and win political power for Viserys, which is not wrong. That's true. Yeah, that's absolutely correct. And she's upset because she feels like she deserves more than that, and she is the heir. And I think I really hate the trope of bad communication.
Mm-hmm.
I just think it always feels like this is such a simple fix. And if Viserys said to her something like, that's not true, you would stay here, you're heir, or you would go to Dragonstone, wouldn't that fix the problem? Because at this point in time, he does believe she's going to be heir.
Yeah. And I think, I wrote the same thing. Rhaenyra and Viserys talking again, literally saying the all caps same thing again. Because I do think at some point he literally said word for word the same thing that they've talked about before, which was frustrating. But I do think towards the end of the scene, when it's revealed sort of that, oh, I had doubts, but you are for sure my heir, I actually think that's when the scene turned, and it ended pretty strong.
I liked the ending a lot. It ends with him saying, you need to remarry to, one, strengthen your claim, and to make heirs yourself.
Yeah.
And I thought that was good. And he tells her, I will not supplant you. I promise you on your mother's memories. And
that was good.
That was really good. And he gives her the choice of who she will marry. And I think all in all, that was really fun. We ended somewhere different from where we started. I just think we started in the same place multiple times.
And this may have been too much. Maybe they tried it and it didn't work. Could we not have them like hug or something? Right?
Yeah.
Like, this is all about Rhaenyra getting love from her father, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's not about respect. It's not about being the ruler. I still don't fully think she like wants to be queen. I think she wants to make her dad happy.
Yeah.
And I really feel like that was an optimal moment for like a physical touch of showing how much, because I do feel like Viserys loves Rhaenyra, and I think Rhaenyra loves Viserys, right? I think
100%.
they are a good family unit together.
Especially
but she just doesn't, she makes a neutral face and walks away again.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe, like I said, maybe they tried it. It didn't work. I feel like I would have liked to see that quite a lot.
Yeah, I think we don't see a lot of that in this show at all, actually. I do think that could have helped to sort of strengthen their bond.
And again, like, that's her opening up and choosing to, I'm not going to just pout about like I've changed, like I'm showing my emotions on my sleeve, as you know.
Yeah. So now we get into the war we're at, the battle.
I'm going to say my one positive thing about the war scene.
Okay,
because I cannot stress this enough. This was the worst part of the episode.
Okay.
And this is the worst part of the show so far.
So I want to talk about the lead up first.
Okay. Beautiful ocean establishing shot.
I love those.
Gorgeous.
Yeah.
It was fantastic. The flying over to them, planning the things out. Gorgeous. Yeah. Everything else is trash.
So we meet Vaemond and Rhaenyra, Valerian, and that was fun. And we get to see Corlys. I missed Rhaenys in this episode. Why wasn't she on the hunt, do you think? Oh, probably because
she's a woman.
Well, I mean, with the party. Yeah. Probably because Corlys and Viserys they aren't doing good right now. Yeah, she's doing her own thing. So, well, it would have been cool because she's a Baratheon, right? And she rides into war and things like that. I think it would have been cool to have her here in this discussion and see her on her dragon.
Yeah, that would have
been fun. It would have been fun to see her be a good ruler and be good at this strategy and see that, hey, maybe she should have been queen, right?
Yeah, really. She's like well respected.
Exactly.
You know. That's a good point. Something that they're talking at this table, right? And they're like, we need a distraction. We need somebody to go down and get them out of the cave so we can do the dragon thing. And the guy's like, that's a suicide mission. Who's going to do it? And then they show Daemon flying over. And I'm like, oh, that was really cool. That was a really good transition. And then it immediately cuts to the guy saying Daemon's gonna do it.
Yeah.
And I was like, y'all.
That did undercut that moment. I did think it looked really cool. I liked the who's gonna do it, and then Daemon flies in. I think that was absolutely so good. I want more of that in the whole episodes. But Daemon flying overhead and the shadow.
It was awesome. It was so good. And then they ruined it. And I get it. Maybe you're trying to make that the other I forget his name. What's the general's name? Who's questioning Corlys?
Do you mean Vaemond?
Yeah, Vaemond. Yeah. Vaemond, I like if you're trying to paint out that Vaemond's like just kind of dumb. Like I get that.
That's what they were trying to do though.
I don't know, because I think he's like very stubborn throughout the rest of the show.
Yeah.
So I can see that. But it was such a good like, oh, that I put that in my head, Daemon. And then they're like, it's Daemon. And I'm like, guys.
Here's how maybe that moment could have been better. It could have gone two ways. It could have been funny. Okay. So Daemon flies in and everyone could have been like, basically, oh great, he's here. How are we going to talk about this without having him basically fuck things up, right? Yeah. We could have had them be like, disperse this meeting. We don't even want to have a discussion with him or something. Or it could have been funny, and it could have been like, well, throw him. He's the reason we're losing the war, right?
Something like that.
Could have been funny even.
Yeah. Or you just need to connect it. Like he flies overhead. They look at each other. He needs to be, you're joking. He would never say yes to this.
Yeah, that would have been nice.
You know?
And again, we put the TV on mute and I know exactly what's happening.
Exactly.
So then Daemon, I liked that we said Daemon's the reason why we're losing this war.
Yeah.
I loved that they said that. I just think it was, it's fun to see that Daemon isn't good at this, and he shouldn't be on the throne.
Mm-hmm.
And that why would he be good at it? Why would he be? He hasn't shown us anything. So I thought that was just a good choice. It kept his character in line.
I do believe that he's probably a good fighter, but he's just such a terrible person and a terrible planner. And I would not believe for a second that he's a strategist in war, you know?
So I think that was great. And then I did like this moment. So the messenger comes in.
Okay.
He gives Daemon the letter. Yeah. And we know this letter is going to be Viserys saying aid. We're going to bring you aid. I liked the sound design and that it kind of like cut out.
Okay.
And then there's not any sound happening. It just starts beating the messenger. And Daemon sucks. He's the worst. Like, absolutely. Why would anyone follow this man? He's terrible. Why would anyone love this man? Why are y'all buying things about him? He's terrible. Like, I would never want to wear a Daemon shirt.
Yeah, I'll say.
If you do, that's like what you want to do. But
whatever.
I just
keep listening.
Yeah, don't leave me. If you like him, that's your prerogative. But I just think he sucks.
Yeah, I think he sucks. And I respect your opinion.
Thank you.
But
you didn't like this moment.
I hated that. I hated it more than anything because what is it supposed to do? Like, it's this sad. I do not throw this word around. I do say it a lot, but it's only when I think it's deserved. It was incredibly pretentious.
I'd like
to do because, like, what am I supposed to? Is Daemon upset? I don't care. Daemon's awful. You know. and he's like beating the guard, and like that's cool. Like him doing that act, I think is fine. That's very on brand.
I specifically like that they cut out the sound.
Oh, I thought it was. I don't know. I thought it was completely because I thought it was the music made it feel like it was his like emotional turmoil, like, oh, nobody trusts me. And I'm like, that's because you suck, guy. Like you are the villain in this series right now.
So
and then he slow motion rose all the way as they read the letter to us. And I'm glad they read the letter. Like
me too.
I like that. But like it was just so not what I need. Like they could have done everything without the weird sound design, all in real time, like as you're beating him and everyone's just standing there and they start reading the letter. I think that would have read a lot better because I don't care about Daemon.
I think maybe what we could have done is I think there's a few issues. One, we could have read the letter while he was like beating the guard. That could have been nice.
Yeah.
And it could have felt like, and we could have had I still really like the sound cutting out, but instead of the music, it could have been like almost like a ringing and sound effect of like this like really angry feeling. And I do think we needed other people's response, right? We needed to see like Corlys being like, Daemon being like, this is exactly the reason or something.
Yeah. While we are talking about this letter thing, before, like as the letter is getting handed, I wrote this down too. I said, we're meeting. Everybody just stopped until the letter got to Daemon. And this is another thing, like everything is just based on events happening. So they're talking and there's literally like 2 seconds of silence where everybody just waits for the guy to show up with the letter to give to Daemon. And everybody's standing still because they haven't been told to do anything else. And I thought that was very funny.
It could have been... We could have seen people whispering, reacting, oh my gosh, thank God we're getting aid, that kind of thing.
No, it literally sounded like they yelled cut because the guy goes, if you don't do something quick, we're going to lose. And then the guy shows up with the letter, like in the same scene. And I'm like, y'all, did we not cut? Did anybody not say anything after that? Like he was having a conversation.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on to the sequence of, I thought the rowing was... I just wish it felt tense because I think if we knew what he was going to do, it would have felt tense. So we got this letter before we understood it was before the rowing moment. It was all from him, the guard arriving all the way to the end of the episode felt nearly the same.
Yeah.
And it really shouldn't have. What were you going to say?
It's just, this is just an unforgivable scene to me, honestly. Okay. So he does the thing, he takes the white flag, and in my mind, when they hatched this plan earlier, right? They were like, we need somebody to distract him out. I thought back, and I realize I'm going to reference Game of Thrones again.
That's fine.
And it's a very like Simpsons did it-esque. Just because Game of Thrones did it doesn't mean that House of the Dragon has to do it the same way.
Yeah.
It's just a very clear connected universe to compare things, right?
Of course, yeah.
I immediately thought of when Robb Stark sent 2,000 troops to fight Tywin while they took Casterly Rock, right? Yeah. That was a very realistic sacrifice of troops. They said very clearly this was a suicide mission, right? So when they were talking about a suicide mission, I didn't realize they were going to get one guy to do this. Because in what world... Right? He shows up there with the white flag. There's 50 archers. There's a ton of people. Like, he's going to do nothing at all. Nobody needs to move. They just need to shoot arrows at him.
It was super unrealistic. So unrealistic. What made it the most unrealistic was the arrows, for sure.
Absolutely.
I wish they needed to do something else to make me believe it. And if maybe they could have at least give him a helmet. At the least, at the minimum, give him a helmet.
Oh, shit.
They could have, or a shield. He could have had a shield.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, for sure.
To block the arrows.
I wrote this down because, 3 arrows hit him at the end? I was like, why didn't y'all just 1v army sooner? Because obviously every archer there is absolutely terrible. All the soldiers are terrible.
I wrote, who needs an army when you have Daemon?
Exactly. Well, and it's this idea, as soon as those arrows fly and he does not get hit a single time and does like a flip in the air, all stakes are gone. Because I know Daemon's going to be just fine. So, nothing is going to happen to Daemon because he's invincible in this scene because the plot needs him to be invincible, right?
Now, here's something else. I think so the fighting was bad. I think the actual choreography, I hate to just say that. I feel bad just throwing that out there, but I just think the fighting wasn't cool.
Yes.
And I think if like the ratio of coolness to believability, if coolness was so much higher, like if the fight was like badass, right? And it was cool and it wasn't believable, I could suspend my disbelief.
Yeah.
I think the problem was it wasn't engaging to watch, nor was it believable.
Yeah.
Both of those things were a problem.
For sure.
So if maybe here's the thing. He was doing what I think anyone who has been trained to fight could do. So if we would have set up that Daemon has something special about him, right? Has he been trained somewhere? Could he have specifically like carried a body part and like blocked arrows with the body? Like what made him special enough
oh my goodness.
to not get hit and not die? I can believe, let's say we took out the arrows. I could believe all of these people not being ready and sort of just like charging haphazardly. And maybe even being cocky because it's one guy.
Yeah.
I could believe that. I can't believe that and the arrows.
Yes.
I just can't believe the arrows. I can't.
Well, it's just like Game of Thrones does such a job of making every single person able to die. At no point do I ever think anybody is immune from dying at any point, right? And this completely takes that away.
Yeah, I agree.
You know? And I wrote this down again. I do agree. I think the flashy fighting was dumb because it's in the after episode they talked. This was his suicide mission. He knew he was going to die. I don't believe that for a second.
I don't think he thought he was going to die.
I don't believe
at all.
for a second he was going to die.
Well, we needed to see that on his face then.
Yeah.
We needed, something else that I really thought, am I cutting you off?
I just wanted to say, what makes a suicide run make sense to me is like the on edge of it all, right? And I wrote down thinking of the fight in Dune 2 between Paul and the Harkonnen.
Yes.
You know? It's the stakes are very real. Paul is losing for a long time, right? And because of that, he's getting more like anxious and out of ideas. And that needs to happen to Daemon, right? Like maybe he is like, oh, it's a suicide mission, but Daemon's not going to kill himself, right? Like he's not going to go down without a literal fight in this case, right? So I think he should get more crazy, right? He should start holding bodies over, like start doing all these crazy, because we know he's sadistic, right? Like there's nothing off the table for him. And all he does is flip around a little bit and kill way more people than he should have. Yeah. And it's laughably bad, this scene.
And if it would have been cool, like if it would have been like, oh shit, oh my gosh, like, but it just didn't look cool because he kind of did the same thing multiple times. Like he would swing someone around and cut their throat, like slice them. Like it just wasn't, I don't think there was enough nuance and creativity in the choices. Or if he was, Daemon's not a smart character, so this might not be the best. Like, not that he's a dumb character, but Daemon's thing isn't strategy, and we obviously saw that. And he's not good at working with other people. So if we would have shown, maybe if he used his surroundings to his advantage somehow.
Yeah, you've got to be smart in some way.
So if he kept being able to dodge the arrows because he kept running and covering, right? And he was using, it's like how Dorne will use like guerrilla warfare to win, right? So if he was smart, or if he came with like a weapon under his shirt that was like something that was like ruthless and gross, or I don't know, see what I'm saying?
I completely agree.
Something that really, so what happens is he looks like he's losing. This all went on way too long. Went on way too long.
Because we know what's going to happen. We know the aid is on its way. We know that this is a suicide mission, right? Like he's going to be fine. So I don't need this to be 5 minutes long.
So what happens is he looks like he's going to lose. He's got a couple arrows in him. And then the sea snake army joins in and the dragon joins in. It was fun seeing another dragon. It was fun seeing Rhaenyra on a dragon.
It was dumb again because I counted at least 3 times the crab feeder was looking up in the sky, right? If Daemon's running in front of you, you're like, oh, let's check for dragons, right? And then the battle started, and then the dragon surprised everybody. Like, you have showed me that you are on guard watching for this dragon multiple times. There is no way it catches you off guard, right? Daemon did nothing to provide more smoke or provide any coverage or anything. So it is just stupid planning at that point, right? Also, I think the dragon, sorry to cut you off.
No, you were talking.
I think the dragon is sort of the main source of, oh my God, we won. And then we see like the aid soldiers come in. Mm-hmm. But again, I feel like they didn't do anything. I feel like Daemon beat everybody and then the dragon finished the job. What
was the difference from this and the other battles? Like, I know it was where you're saying we had to draw him out.
Yeah, I would have loved to seen where Daemon blacks out because of all the pain he's in or something, right? And he wakes up a few minutes later and he sees all these well-armored royal knights forcing people out of the caves to be burnt by the dragon or something like that. Like, it is very clearly the king's help that won the war. And that's what makes Daemon upset.
Well, it wasn't the king's help. That was the Sea Snake's army.
Oh, really?
Specifically, this whole point was doing it without the king's help.
I thought they got there.
in the next episode, no.
Oh, I was confused.
No, that's okay. That was the Sea Snake's
even
army.
Stupider then. Honestly, even stupider.
Here's the thing. What really gets me, I have two things about this. First, the whole point was drawing the army out. Mm-hmm. This battle looked the same as it did in the opening of the episode. It just wasn't dark.
Yeah.
Right? So people were running out to fight, but why?
Well,
why'd they run out?
In what board meeting are you going to be like, yeah, so Daemon, you're going to show up and then the entire army is going to come out to fight you? Because that's what they would do.
So I would have just let him. Why wouldn't we all go guard the crab feeder guy and take him down when he gets there and it's just him 1v a whole army, right? It's not believable. So that was a problem to me. And then the whole point was drawing them out. Mm-hmm. He went in the cave and got the guy. Yeah. So what was different than the first episode, right? The first few minutes.
Yeah. Well, and then we have the scene, he like drags the half body and like that looked really cool. And Corlys looks over and he's a changed man. And I'm like, bullshit, dude. Daemon is not different at all. Shut up. It was completely undeserved. I did not believe anything of that at all.
Here's my biggest thing. Mm-hmm. So we see the crab feeder guy retreating and he's going to go into his caves, which we don't know. All we think are that these are caves, right? So like, and then Daemon runs after him. I really believe that every episode and every season needs a climax. Mm-hmm. There was especially when you're talking about something that is like a battle, because that is so rooted in the plot structure.
For sure.
Any sort of battle or something like that. Mm-hmm. There was no choice. Daemon's choice was, do I not go defeat our enemy or do I defeat our enemy? Right? And so he chose to do exactly what he was supposed to do, right? There was no actual choice. And we're looking at him and he's looking at the army and Corlys is looking there and he's like, yeah, I'm going to go get this guy. We needed to see him decide to like put himself in danger. There's got to be something dangerous about these caves, all right? He needed to decide to put someone else in danger, right? There had to be a decision to make it a climax.
Or even more, like we've established that Daemon's a terrible leader. So he's just going to go along with the plan, right? Right. I feel like it would be better that they would be like, we need a way to draw him out. And Daemon's like, I'll do it. And everyone's like, no, that's a stupid idea, Daemon. Yes. And then he goes.
And then he does it anyways. And it could have been.
It works.
Well, that could have been fun too. And maybe instead, the crab feeder guy is like, I don't know, maybe he's not going back to the cave. Maybe he's going to retreat. Or maybe Daemon's order was Corlys is going to get him, right? Maybe that was the order.
Something.
And he sees that he could either save Corlys or go get the crab feeder guy. And he says like, who cares about you, Corlys? I want to kill him, right? Like, there just needed to be some sort of choice happening. It needed to become a climactic moment, and there wasn't one.
Because, like, this whole war is because Daemon is being selfish.
Yeah.
And he won. So he was rewarded for his being stupid, you know?
I don't have any problem with rewarding characters for making bad choices.
But then they're acting like he changed in some big way. And it's like, actually, you didn't.
I don't have a problem with when people make morally poor choices being rewarded for it, because that's inherently this world.
Yeah.
And
I just don't think they're playing this as a poor moral choice.
No, I don't think they are.
I think this is his redemption of a character, and it's laughably bad.
I just think this scene was pretty rough. It was pretty bad.
This was by far the least fun I had in the series so far,
which is
crazy
because
it was an elaborate
battle.
big battle scene. And I'm sure it took a lot of work, and I'm sure a lot of people worked really hard on it. But boy, did I hate it.
Yeah, I agree. And it's sad because the potential is so strong. There's so much money. These are the top actors, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so it feels sad that like the best, it's just anticlimactic.
Yeah.
It's kind of just meh.
So, and that ends the episode.
Yeah.
And I think overall this episode, the biggest thing I put was there's just no subtext in any of the lines. The last bit we talked about was all like battle scenes, so that makes sense. But the scenes, again, where we're talking about the same things over and over, I just feel the one-dimensionality of them. There are no layers on top of layers, which is something that the show is desperately missing.
Yeah, I agree, especially because it is a political drama and it is these higher up houses, and I think that's what this world is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah, how many crab soldiers do you think you could take on?
0. Do I have Daemon's skill set?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. All of them. They seem horribly incompetent.
Okay.
Yeah.
I feel like I would also take on all the crab soldiers. I could easily take them all down.
You think so?
Yeah, I do. After seeing that, absolutely.
I have no strength. I do feel like I'm agile enough to avoid every arrow.
Yeah, well, the biggest fear was the arrows, but now that I know they're useless, it's...
If Daemon got hit with 3, I think I could be hit with none. I'm quick.
You are pretty quick.
Yeah.
Okay, what's the quote?
Okay. My quote is Viserys saying this to Alicent, and I think what's fun about Viserys in this episode is you really think he's like this rattling, kooky old man who his health is declining, and he's actually kind of saying things that are really important, and he fully believes all of this prophecy is important. I think that's what makes his character feel so fleshed out, is he has layers to his character, and he really feels like what he's doing is the utmost importance, right? You feel that every character should feel that everything is life or death, and he really feels that way. He feels like the whole realm is truly on his shoulders about this heir. And so with the stag and things like that, it just feels really important from his perspective, and that's really fun. And everyone else is just kind of taking it at surface value, but he clearly isn't. And so he kind of drunkenly says to Alicent at the bonfire on this hunt, he says, "Many in my line have been dragon riders. Very few among them have been dreamers." He then says, "What is the power of a dragon? It's the path of prophecy." I thought that was a really good line.
2 quotes today.
It's right after one after the other.
All right. Thanks so much for listening. I'm Alex.
I'm Madison.
And this has been
Welcome to the Writers' Room.
We really appreciate if you would share this, like this, interact, so more people can hear it. We love sharing our opinions, and we'd love to get your opinions as well. Catch us next week as we talk about episode 4 of House of the Dragon. What should they expect for next week's episode?
A whole lot of fun, a whole lot of fire.
Bye.